What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today I am sharing with you a stall or control list that has the potential to beat just about anything given the right techs and given that you don't get poor pricing for the relative matchup. This deck was shared by Peter Kika, a base list he posted on Twitter that he said he would have played for day 2 if he had made day 2. I took that list and updated it. The deck didn't have a great win condition to win in time in a tournament setting prior to Jessie and James. And with Hidden Fates becoming standard legal on September 6th, this deck gets a huge buff because you can essentially mill your opponent from their hand. But we will get to that. So the basis of this deck is Knockout Reviver. During your opponent's next turn, if this Pokemon is knocked out, your opponent can't take any prize cards for it. This is the main attack of the deck, and this is how we get to our win condition of outlasting our opponent until they deck out. Malamar is used to Psychic Recharge Energy to Poipole. If a Poipole is knocked out every turn, we get the Recycle Energy back to our hand, send up a Jirachi with an Escape Board on it, then Psychic Recharge to a new Poipole, attach Recycle Energy to a new Poipole, and we're back in action with Knockout Reviver. So you'll see a lot of support Pokemon. This is a very teched out list. I don't think you need to build a stall or control deck to beat every deck in the meta, and I don't think that's correct to do either, but I'm building for Atlantic City Regionals, which is at the end of the month, and it is too far away to call what exactly the meta will look like. So I could see a matchup or two matchups techs getting cut prior to Atlantic City if I were to play this there. And I will talk about the matchups in just a few moments, but we will go over the entire list. So for the support Pokemon, like the draw support Pokemon, we've got 4 Jirachi for its Stellar Wish. Look at the top 5, get a trainer. This is just great for consistency, and it's also good because we need an Escape Board pivoter anyway. Dedenne, just the one Dedenne. I really hate putting this down, especially versus Pikarom, which can be a very close matchup. You do not want a 2-prizer on your bench in that matchup, but Dedenne change is good if you have just a really poor hand and you need to get your turn 2 Knockout Reviver. You can Pokecom for a Dedenne. And you don't really mind throwing away most things in this deck because your Pokemon can come back, your supporters and stadiums can come back, your Psychic Energy wants to be in the discard pile, so you don't really mind the discarding factor, but you sometimes mind having a 2-prizer on the bench. And then in the support Pokemon that help the deck work, it's basically just the 4-3 Malamar line, and then we have a bunch of techs. So we'll start out with the Tina. This almost looks like a Malamar deck since it has the Tina in it now. I like the Tina because sometimes you need to clear a threat off of your opponent's board, like an Oranguru, and you want to use a single prize attacker to do so. So you can just recur Tina from your discard pile onto your board, double recharge, and attach a Recycle Energy and Shadow Impact. Things like Girafarig and Oranguru are 2 of the major threats that we will be removing with this card. You could also use it in a pinch versus Blacephalon, I suppose, if you can't find your Fini, but like I said, I will get into the matchups. Latios-GX is mostly here for its Clear Vision GX. We don't want to lose to a milling GX attack like Tyranitar Sableye Tag Team's GX attack or Magcargo's GX attack. So at any time in a matchup where you think a tag team, a GX attack is a threat to you winning the game, you might want to Clear Vision GX. There are some matchups where you just Clear Vision GX right off the bat to get it out of the way, and you don't mind giving up those 2 prizes in those specific matchups. Like versus Mewtwo, you want to get rid of their chance to use Espeoxys' GX attack or Magcargo's GX attack. Like I said, versus Dark Box, you don't want them to use Sableye Tyranitar's GX attack. and so on. And also Ultra Necrozma, that's an important one, because they will knock out their own Pokemon to get to the prize count necessary to use Sky Scorching Light. So if you know that your opponent, or you suspect your opponent might be playing Ultra in their Malamar deck, you want to use Clear Vision GX. Next is Mew, Bench Barrier. You need to protect your bench at all costs, since the only thing you want being knocked out is Poipole, so this is important versus Pikarom, it's important versus Nagquag, it's important versus maybe things that have Dugong teched in, maybe Malamar lists with Dugong, just anything that can do damage to your bench you want to use Mew. And then the 4 Poipole, we have a Lunatone and Solrock, which is a 2-card tech for Ability Zard, and I do not like having a 2-card tech, but if these two are not prized, I feel like that matchup is unlosable. If you have Solrock in play, so you need both of them in play, Fire Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponents have no abilities except Pokemon GX and Pokemon EX. So this means Ninetales from Team Up does not have its ability that gusts up things, and therefore they cannot get around Poipole, and they do not play custom catchers in that deck. Ninetales is their only gust effect, so if you bench Lunatone Solrock, you can just go on with your loop of Knockout Reviver until your opponent decks out. And they, if they do have Victini Prism, and you have prized your Wobbuffet, you can just knock out Victini and then get back to your loop to deck them out again after they shuffle their fire energy back in, so it can be a long matchup. But if you can effectively bench Lunatone, Solrock, Wobbuffet, a Jirachi, and a Malamar, and then with Poipole in the active, that's your preferred bench versus Ability Zard. They cannot use their Ninetales team up, and they can also not attack with Victini. And then lastly, besides the Wobbuffet, which I did explain there, it's for Victini, but it's also for Volcanion, Prism, and Nagquag, and it's to slow down Pikarom, which is an iffy matchup. It slows them down if they can't use their Koko Prism. The last one is Tapu Fini. Through testing versus Blacephalon, I found you need to beat Blacephalon by taking 6 prize cards, and it's actually not too hard since we are playing 2 Brock's Grit and 4 Pokecom. Before having Wobbuffet, my cut for Wobbuffet was 3 Brock's Grit, so it was actually much easier to do the Tapu Fini with 3 Brock's Grit and 4 Pokecom. You can also just 2-shot something with Tina as well versus Blounds, but the reason why you have to take 6 prizes versus Blounds is Bursting Burn. It will never work out in your favor. They're going to burn, you retreat to a new Poipole, burn, retreat to a new Poipole, until your Poipoles are at like 60 damage and 40 damage, or 60 and 60, and then Bursting Burn knocks out after the turn, and Knockout Reviver doesn't prevent them from taking a prize card, and eventually they will take all their prize cards this way. So once they burn you, you just retreat, knock them out with Tapu Fini. They'll return the Tapu Fini kill, likely they'll try to do it with like a Naganadel GX, or 2-shot it with a Baby Nag, and after your Fini gets knocked out or it gets damaged, you just go into another Poipole, Knockout Reviver, and you say Knockout Reviver until they're forced to try Bursting Burning again, and then you go back in with Tapu Fini. It's pretty simple there. I did say I would save the matchups until I got through the list, but since we got the Tapu Fini, I wanted to explain why it's there, and that's basically the whole Blounds matchup. We have the Beast Ball. If we want all 4 Poipoles in our cycle, so we want to get one out of the prize if it's in there. 4 Treasure, 4 Pokecom for consistency. 3 Ultra Space, because that is essentially part of our loop. It guarantees we can search out a Poipole, and we have essentially infinite Ultra Space because of Lusamine. Bill's Analysis 4, Brock's Grit 2, Cynthia 4, Jessie and James 2, Lusamine 2. Now this is very iffy, only having 2 Lusamine. I think I'm going to change it to this for now. Because all of these Pokemon techs, I should say, aren't currently in the list I'm playing. The Wobbuffet, so if we just put Jessie and James, we're at 61 cards here, just note that. I put in the Wobbuffet to explain matchups and show you guys the deck, but I'm not really sure what I want to cut, and like I said, the final list before the tournament will likely cut 1 or 2 matchups text, depending on what matchups you expect to see the most of and which ones are going to be there. So yeah, definitely 3 Lusamine, that is my bad. And then the 1 Jessie and James, if you prize it, your win condition's slower, you just have to naturally deck them out. But Wobbuffet would be cut for Jessie and James, or Tapu Fini would be cut for Jessie and James, or whatever it is. If you can't just play the 2 Lusamine, that's why I fixed that real quick. Because if you prize 2, you have lost the game. So you need 3 in your, you need to play 3. Prizing 1 is fine. You need 2 in your deck. So if you only played 2 and you prized 1, and that would be very, very bad. I'm just adding the Wobbuffet back. So yeah, this list is very teched out, like I said. The Solrock and Lunatone just take up a lot of space, unfortunately, but Ability Zard seems like one of the best decks in the format right now, so I think it's important to beat. Tina is also pretty cuttable, maybe the 4th Jirachi, if you wanted to keep the Wob and also keep the double Jessie and James. We'll just say, for instance, you choose to cut the Jirachi, so we'll make the list like this for now. And then the 3 Lusamine, of course, broken supporter that kind of makes this deck possible, but the 2 in any combination of supporter and stadium cards from your discard pile into your hand. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We got the 3 board, the 2 recycle, 6 basic psychic. So once you get your deck down to 0 cards or close to 0 cards, your loop is every 4 turns Lusamine for Lusamine and Brock's Grit, Lusamine for Lusamine and Jessie and James. Then next turn play Brock's Grit. Then next turn play Jessie and James. And then start it all over again. So your Brock's Grit turn lines up when you have 3 Poipole in the discard and another one either on board or about to be on board. So you shuffle 3 Poipole and then other Pokemon or Psychic Energy in. You'll usually be discarding Psychic Energy with Jessie and James. That's your discard fodder. So it goes Lusamine for Brock's Grit and Lusamine, Lusamine for Jessie and James and Lusamine, then play Brock's Grit, then play Jessie and James, and start it all over again. Every turn between there, you're saying Knockout Reviver. Of course, I already explained the Blounds matchup, so you know that one's a little different. That one is just Knockout Reviver until they burn you, then try to take your prize with Tapu Fini. So going over the matchups, I have some notes here. Versus Green's Reshizard, that matchup feels virtually unlosable. They have 4 custom catchers in their deck. They can gust you twice, so it's very, very easy to just go along with your game plan. And all of these matchups I have physically played. I tested a fair amount versus Green Reshi, but after about 4 to 5 games, a handful of games I've played versus all of these, you can kind of get the gist of what's going to happen as long as everything goes normally. Versus Ability Zard, that's very, very favored if Solrock and Lunatone are in the deck. I'm pretty sure that one's unlosable as well. Like I said, if Solrock and Lunatone are in the deck, they're not prized. They can't gust you. And then if Wobbuffet's also not prized, they can't attack with Victini because they can never gust Wobbuffet off of the bench. And if Wobbuffet isn't prized, you just knock out the Victini the first time they use it with Tina, and you're good to go. Pika Rom that is not playing Guru is favored. Things can go wrong. They can they can judge you at an awkward time and potentially put you into a poor hand. But even if you have your Jirachi and you have your Poipoles in deck, I've usually been fine versus Pika Rom and Pika Judge as long as they don't play the Guru, because they can take an early knockout, they can catch her twice, they can tag bolt, and the tag bolt, if they catch her to Mew earlier, the tag bolt is hitting the active Poipole that they don't take a prize for, and then one other bench Pokemon. So they usually take about 4 prizes, but when the Guru gets put into the mix, they can get back their custom catchers, and then you have to knock out the Guru and they take a prize for that, so that one gets a little messier. We'll get into that though. Blounds, I think, is favored if Tapu Fini is in the deck. If Tapu Fini is not in the deck, you have to try to go 2 shots with Tina and then draw into Tapu Fini, and then it's definitely messier and unfavored for you, but not unwinnable. Mewtwo is very favored as long as you can clear vision to save yourself from GX attack win conditions that they may be able to have, like my Cargo GX, or if you got a slow start Espeoxys to sweep a few prizes at a single time. Guardian is favored as long as you have 2 Jirachi on your bench. So you want to bench 2 Jirachi while you're going through your loop and your normal game plan, because if they magical miracle you in the same turn that they custom catch your Jirachi to put you to a 0-card hand without any Jirachi on the board, you can potentially lose your loop to a few turns of dead draw, and they can just run through you from there. Malamar, I have found, is fairly favored, unless they're playing Ultra and you prized your Latios-GX, or they're playing extra spread cards, so like double Mew and custom catchers to gust around, and Jinx and Esper if you prized your Mew or they custom catchered it and you couldn't shuffle it back in. But versus Tina Tags I've seen mostly without catchers, and that one is favored. Ultra without custom catchers is very favored. Ultra with custom catchers is a little shaky. But I do think most Malamar variants running around are without custom catchers, and probably at least half are without Ultra Necrozma. So overall, versus Malamar variants, you're favored. And then versus Nagquag, excuse me, if you have Mew to prevent bench damage, and you have Wobbuffet to prevent Volcanion Prism from using its effect that makes you switch your active Pokemon, you're all good to go. Then the bad matchups I have listed are decks with multiple Guru, so like Shedinja, and those decks will also have multiple Giraffe most of the time, or at least one Girafarig. So you don't like decks that have resource management, because then you have to take a turn to knock it out. And you don't like decks that play Girafarig because they can Lost Zone your cards. These aren't unwinnable. They're just messy, likely to tie. There are ways to get around it, I'm sure, playing your own Guru, playing your own Giraffe, which Girafarig was in this list until I realized I needed Tapu Fini. Like I said, the list is very teched out, and there's work to do with it still. But yeah, multiple Guru and multiple Giraffe are both threats. And anything with custom catchers that play Guru, and this is usually only Pikarom, so I've written Pikarom with a Guru, because of the situation I explained where they Guru back custom catchers and you have to take a turn to knock out the Guru, so they get a free prize with that and then a free prize off of custom catchers. So that is the matchups and the function of the list, and why all the cards I have here are in the list. The deck is functionally, it feels broken versus the decks where it's good matchups. It feels like there's broken mechanics happening, like Jessie and James to mill your opponent's hand so they can't go Cynthia every time they're at a 0-card deck to just replenish their deck and time you out into a tie. Lusamine to get back your Ultra Space Jessie and James and your Brock's Grit and your other Lusamines. Lusamine just being able to get itself again, like a different Lusamine in your discard pile, is just a broken concept in my opinion. That's why it was banned and expanded. You'll see these things, they're both banned and expanded. They're very, very powerful cards. And then Poipole Knockout Reviver, I think it's just being used here in a way that it was never meant to be used, which essentially is when a card becomes very, very powerful, when you found a way to abuse things. So there's multiple things here being abused in a single deck. The Jessie and James is just the icing on the cake for this Poipole stall deck. I do want to say that I know Finnegan Lynch, who owns CutterTap.com, him and his testing group, they played a Poipole stall type deck day one, and then Peter Kika and his testing group had a similar thing built for day two. Peter Kika did write an article on this site on 6 prizes, I believe, It's either 6 prizes or Poke Beach. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. He did write an article on this deck. His article has a lot of knowledge past what I have shared with you today, and this is also not the same list that Peter shared in his list and that he currently has built. I respect him as a friend, a player, and a content creator, so I would not share a list that was behind a paywall in this video. Just wanted to make that disclaimer. If you're interested in more knowledge and another player's insight on the list, and one of the players that created the initial list, or one of the initial lists for it, definitely go check out Peter's article on Poipole Stall, and he also included some other decks in that article. But yeah, this deck is very, very strong. It's kind of absurd. Just the thing weighing it down is that you need a 2-card tech for Ability Zard, and Ability Zard is one of the strongest decks in the format, if not the strongest deck currently in our standard metagame. If Ability Zard was not a thing, if Ninetales Team Up was not a thing, and I could cut this Lunatone and Solrock for like the 3rd Brock's Grit and the 4th Jirachi, then I would really, really be in love with this deck. But you have like a 1 in 5 chance of prizing one of these cards versus Ability Zard. And then you also have all these other one-of techs that you don't want to prize, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I just wanted to share my knowledge and my testing results and what I've learned about the deck so far. I've been working on it for a little less than 2 weeks, I think. And this is version 5, probably, iteration of the deck. Peter Kika and Edwin Lopez have both given me some information on the deck, so I have to credit them for their feedback as well. But like I said, this is my own list. It's at least 5 cards off of lists that they have shared. I know there are things that we don't agree on, and like I said, this is not the same list behind the paywall, so make sure you go check that out if you're interested in more knowledge on the list. As always, check out flipsidegaming.com, where I write free weekly articles, and you can use code Celio for 10% off of their online store. They have a lot of stuff, great deals on sleeves and supplies. They're my go-to for Dragon Shield sleeves, since they're usually like $7.99 a box there, and then you get the 10% off, so that's really great. And subscribe to me here if you enjoy the content, and you can also watch me on Twitch. I usually try to stream PTCGO 4 or 5 nights a week, but I am starting grad school tomorrow, so I'll have to try to keep that grind going. I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.